We're good to go with another Man in the Van, brought to you by Holeshot Motorhomes and Crossbox. I have to say, I don't mind admitting this. Back in 1986, I bunked off doing some homework because I wanted to do a drawing, and I did a drawing of this gentleman and took it to Matcham's to get him to sign it. I never thought all these years later you'd be sat in a van just candidly chatting with me, you know, like every detail. That's when you had your Robert kit, as it, you signed it, you complimented it, you didn't just diss it off. You probably can't remember any of this, you've signed loads of autographs in your time. So yeah, here we are. It's all a bit surreal still to this day. Free time, I still say 4-time.
I prefer 3.
You prefer 3 because you have one. 3-time world 500cc champion, Dave Thorpe. Dave, great to have you in the van.
Nice to be here.
Yeah,
nice to be here.
Seen them, and your complimentary band, which is always nice. But this is a bit of a we're not just going to talk about your career, we're going to talk about your career through the, basically a medium that you've now finally got, you say finally got around to doing. You've written a book, which is awesome. Tell us about it.
Well, it's been a long time in the making, really. I kind of did start something quite a few years ago, and then I stopped it because I'm a strange person, really. When honestly I am, but when things start to get on top of me and I've got lots of things going on, I don't try and carry on with them all. Something has to go so that I can focus on something, because it's just the way I am. I prefer to give 110%.
Is that right? See, it's funny. See, straight away, there's something within 2 minutes I did not know.
I like to, if everything starts to get on top of me, there's always something that's got to go. And the book went, and I dropped it. And then just before COVID, Gail, my wife, she was, Dave, you know, so many people ask you about a book, and I said, yeah, I know, but you know, I'm not really sure. I said, I'm not really sure that people would be interested, really, because it's, you know, it's old. Yeah, I did.
Really?
Honestly,
are you kidding me? You gotta be kidding me.
Yeah. I'm a civilian now. I don't look back and go, wow, you know, it's just not how I am. So Gailey said, look, I think you'd be quite surprised. So then I kind of give it some thought. Who could I do it with? And then Jack Bernicle, right from the very beginning, when I was just starting out as a sort of semi-pro rider, Jack was an aspiring journalist, and we used to spend a lot of time together. And Gail said to me, well, look, you know, you get on well with Jack, why don't you have a chat with Jack? So we talked it through, and that's really where it began. And then COVID hit. So
this was post-COVID by how many years? Just literally about a year before?
6 months before, yeah. And then COVID hit, and then our whole world went upside down for all of us. Yeah. But fortunately, Jack and I continued to talk via Zoom over a long period of time. You know, we'd sort of square off a day or a morning or 2 days in a week, and we just basically went through it systematically, and then tried to put it together in a formula, and then it went back and forth loads of times.
I bet.
And I'll be honest, you know, I never really realised how much effort goes into a book, and it's been amazing for me, Dad, Gail, all of the family. It's been amazing to go back over it and talk about it, and then bring pictures out that actually engage the brain and go, oh, do you know what, I remember that, I remember this. And you know, one of the hardest bits of the book for me really was Eric, George and Harkin are not here, and I couldn't kind of pick up the phone. You know, I used to speak to Eric and George periodically, but I couldn't pick up the phone to any of them and go, oh, do you remember this? So I had to really think it through myself. And then when the book was finished in terms of words with Jack and I, then, as you know, it goes to a proofreader. Yeah. And then that opens another can of worms, because obviously, you know, I'm just a normal lad that happened to be able to ride a motorbike quite well. So I didn't want the book to be taken over in a way that it's not how I speak. Yeah. You know,
that's a valid point, because it happens a lot.
You know, I just wanted it to be how I am. So then the lady that proofread it from the publishers, that are people that are publishing it for us, I got on really well with her, which was great because she understood exactly what I wanted, or didn't want rather, from the beginning. So then as that started to evolve, then Gail and Honda, a gentleman called Nick Bennett and Honda UK, they really got on board, and at that point Gail really drove everything about it with Nick. And you'll see in the months that come by now, you know, we went to Namur, we've done some filming, there's some amazing stuff there. And Gail had contacted Andre Malherbe, who I speak to via text occasionally, but she got hold of him. And when we went to Namur, you know, we managed to go and see him, and I kind of thought we'd go and see him and have a chat with no cameras, but he was more than happy to have the cameras there, and I kind of loved that, to be fair.
Yeah, I'm sure.
You know, it was
because
we had some wonderful times together.
I can,
and he did make me chuckle, not to spoil anything if they use it, Honda, but we had a little chit chat, and the guy was chatting to Andre, and he says to him, "So Andre, what would Dave's good points be when he was a racer?" So he kind of said, well, obviously technically he was good, and then he'd say that physically I was good, mentally I was really strong, and then he looked at me and then he said, and he'd always use my settings, and it just creased me up really.
I'll tell you what I could see at that moment, like, I wasn't there obviously, but for those of you who have watched the film Days of Thunder, when they're both injured and then they're wheelchairing, I could see you two still being like that now. I absolutely could, because, you know, the rivalry, like you said, the Perrett, I mean, just the names you mentioned there in the world of motocross, you know, okay, you've written a book, obviously your story, but the people you were racing against, they're to be entwined into their story as well, and the battles. I mean, for me, for example, obviously the Farley race everybody talks about, still one of my favorite races of yours was still Luxembourg '86. I watched that videotape over and over and over, back and forth and back and forth, relentless, for 45 minutes.
There was it was an amazing race, and there's not many championships that go to the wire with potentially 4 guys that can walk away with a #1 plate. So there's some great stuff in the book. I mean, obviously it starts right early doors when I'm young, and all the time in my AMCA racing with them, and then when I turned into the ACU, kind of learning my trade. There's some really cool bits, and then of course once you get involved in the HRC bubble, obviously everything becomes a different animal then.
Yeah, I'm sure. Like you said, the whole story of it for me, and then I guess, like you said, there's certain things, but there must be moments researching with Jack, things that you'd clearly forgotten about.
Absolutely.
That you're like, oh my god, like, and then I guess that process of just these memories coming flooding back from doing the research. And Jack, let's be honest, his photo catalogue and library is so, I mean,
he's got an amazing amount of photographs, and to be honest, you know, you talk about the riders of the 80s, but also we had so many great photographers in that period who have been amazing with us for pictures in the book. So it has been a great journey with the book, but the day that we pushed that button and it went, there was a big sigh of relief. You know, because it's you want to you want to explain a story, and I often say to Gail, you know, a little bit worried about, you know, people might not like it, and she said, Dave, it's not about like or not like, because you can't change history.
It happened. Exactly that.
That's exactly what she said.
And that's from your viewpoint.
And it's from where I sat in a sweaty helmet, and my take on how I felt, what it was like, and the whole scenario of dealing with everything.
Yeah, because, you know, as I said, for me as a youngster in that era, and the moments, the highs, the lows, which you get in sport, we've kind of lived them with you, but from outside, never really fully appreciating what, you know. I can remember, like, when the Namur incident, when you broke your hand, you know, the hand, and then your body English on that video, just, it's there. You wouldn't even have to say anything. You just, you know, was it Steve
Whitelock, my boss.
You know, and it's like, oh, that right there and then you kind of knew that's another one that's got away.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, it is an interesting scenario, and the other bit that people won't really necessarily think about the book, but it's about from the beginning to now, and it's about also, I talk about the difficulty in some ways of going from a professional racer to what I consider now just a civilian.
I like the term civilian. But by the way, like, you feel like you wasn't a civilian before that. Yeah, that's brilliant.
But that whole transition of you know, pretty much having everything done for you, and then all of a sudden you kind of just fall into a normal 9 till 5 role of whatever you're doing. And that, I talk a little bit about that, and the transition of the young riders that I started to do work with, and how I how I maybe didn't get it right early on, and just all those things.
See, you got me intrigued just with that alone, having obviously myself running a team and stuff like that. But like you say, you're you, and everything that you did to become successful is not necessarily always going to work with somebody else. Yeah, and you kind of but you've always done it your way, so you don't know any different. No, right? There's stuff in it,
and you'll see in the book how, you know, certain people. To be fair, there was one mum that said something to me that is mentioned in there, and it really made me register. Actually, what is she talking about?
Yeah.
And then you go home and you digest it, and you think, yeah, do you know what? She's right. And then it kind of, you start to evolve it all then. And, you know, after racing for myself, I've had the most amazing riders across the board, young and older, that have been an absolute pleasure to work with and alongside. And yeah, you've got that whole transition of being a rider and having everything there, and then all of a sudden you're a team manager stroke owner, and then you're having to pull everything there for that rider to have that experience. And
as I said, even with that wealth of experience of being a rider, but because you were so in that bubble, particularly at that time, HRC and all their might was a different, you know. Obviously the team that you do with Honda backing is amazing, but back then the resources alone into that was very different.
Well, no different than as it is now. The only difference is with Tim is the fact that they're, you know, just 2 riders instead of 3.
Oh yeah, sorry, not with Tim. I meant with what you're doing. You know, like you. Exactly. Very, very different. So, that would be a good chapter to read then. What about, obviously, like, okay, you've mentioned Gail quite a lot. Lewis and Ryan, have they had a chance to read it yet, or whatever? Did they help on the read? Because, you know, I obviously remember seeing pictures. Lewis so big when you were going for World Championship. I'm not even sure Ryan was born when you won your first World Championship.
No, he wasn't.
No. So
Louis was. So yeah, no.
For them, it's got to be so cool for them.
Yeah, they don't really remember so much because they were really quite young then. You know, when we look at pictures, obviously they'd see things, and they've seen the video, they've seen the promotional videos. It's it must be strange for them too.
I'm sure it
is. Because you know, they see a lot of pictures they maybe haven't necessarily seen before, and I'm sure it's
and the same with Gail.
Yeah, I think I'm the only person that's read the book back to front.
Yeah.
You know, it's been in the house for a long time, and I always say to Gail, "You finished that book?" No, I need to do that. But Gail is really, really busy doing lots of things, I hasten to add, for me. So it's it will be interesting to really.
I'm certainly looking forward to it. One bit for me that's always been kind of special with your career and whatever, though, is your dad. Now, the reason I say that is because your dad was involved with the RTT Honda team that I was involved with back in 2004, and we went to America, and I really got to know your dad a bit more during that time, and he was so good to me, like incredible, you know. And we was only in America for those 2 or 3 weeks, but he was so, you know, he could tell that I was on the team as a rider, but also helping put the team together, and he was so supportive, and I'll always remember that. But then for him as well, you know, because I always relate to all the VHS videos, because that's how I used to watch your career. and obviously like when you won the one in 85 in Roland, and then they do that interview with you afterwards, you're keeping it in check just about, or he probably hasn't sunk in, but your dad's just there, isn't he? And he starts to go, he's going, and that is always stuck with me, because I've always thought, Christ, yeah, that just goes to show it's such a family thing to achieve in anything, particularly in sport at that level. It's not, you got your team around you, but it's so personal to the time and investment that he put into you.
Yeah, well, mum and dad, you know, when you when you read the book, you kind of you'll understand that at the end of the day, I've got no siblings, so I'm an only, and my parents moved from London to Bracknell. We lived in a council house, and yeah, there are certain elements, and I always say this to everybody, there are certain elements in my life where the right door is opened at the right time. Yeah, you know, and I've been very fortunate.
Still got to walk through it though.
You have. You've still got to walk through it. But for some people, for whatever reason, they don't just have that right fall. Yeah, it doesn't fall their way. But there's been times in my life where, you know, without those doors opening and without pushing that little bit further in there, I could never have achieved early on where I wanted to be. And it's quite interesting when you start mulling over it, how the sort of catalogue of things happened. And when I broke my leg, I thought my world had ended. You know, when you're 18 years old and you can't ride your bike for the best part of 13 months, you think it's the end of the world, really. Yeah.
So just when you're on the precipice of breaking through as well. Yeah.
But in reflection, you do have a lot of time to think of what you really, really want in life. Yeah. And I've always been brought up by both my parents to, you know, if you really want something, Dave, you've got to take it with both hands. Yeah. You're either all in or you're all out. Yeah. And that's always their mentality with me. It's just,
well, like you said at the start, like with the book, like you couldn't commit to it until you were ready to fully commit to it. Yeah. Oh, it's going to be good. I'm looking forward to it, because it's just been kind of long overdue. That's not a pop at you for taking your time. But you know, so many of us, particularly my generation and others, like you said, you felt that you maybe want relative to the next generation, all these kids that are here racing the day at Whitby and whatnot. But you know, certainly for my generation and people even older than me, you know, whatever, sorry to throw that in. but they were iconic key moments, you know. I can remember so many of them, like Farley 89, you know, like you'd never quite been able to put it together over 2 races there because of obviously the famous one in 85 and whatever, and then bang, like romped it, and they had a youth support there that is red hot, and I remember being sat on top of the van because we could get a good view from the paddock and thinking, God, he's gonna do it, he's finally gonna win the second moto and get it done, and things like that.
I have been lucky to be surrounded by great people. My dad being behind me all the time, every step of the way. It's funny because Honda, I don't know where they found it. They found a little clip which is out there, and when I watched it, I said to Gail, "Oh, looks like Dad's getting angry with me there." Because as I come by, he shows me the board, and then he sort of just has this gesture at me, and I was thinking, obviously I'd just gone by, I didn't quite see it, but when I saw it on the camera, I was thinking, he didn't normally get angry with me, so maybe I wasn't quite twisting.
Even he was like, God, we're gonna get this thing done once and for all. It's looking good. So what's the book called and when's it out, Dave?
So it's No Regrets. And there actually is a little bit that most people miss at the minute, which says "well, almost" underneath it. And the book pre-sale is now, and should be going out to people by the end of August. I do plan to have some books at Fox Hills. Yeah, I've seen that. So I'm looking forward to that. That we will sign there. So yeah, it's began.
You'll be back in your prompt signing more autographs that day than back in the day.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, you probably will. There'll be a queue, I guarantee it.
Well, I hope people enjoy it, because I know Gail and I have had a lot of fun putting it together.
Dave, from a certain generation, obviously, like, there you go, it's hero status. Of course we're going to buy it and read it. Bang on. Well, I'll let you go because we got to do other stuff now. Team managers meetings and all sorts. It never stops being a team manager, does it?
No, but it's to be honest, this is a journey, isn't it? Yeah. It was 5.5 hours from Devon. Yeah. I think Ryan just said it was 7.5 hours in the lorry.
It's a long way.
But from my memories of Whitby, it should be good racing.
Yes, Dave was good racing. Yeah. So we'll let you go. There you go. Buy this gentleman's book. You know you want to. We certainly will, and we wish you the best. We'll get you in another time actually to talk about the team more. Okay. We'll do that at some point as well.
Okay.
Because I still like in the beginning of the year with your quote with Tommy and whatever. But that's another subject. So we'll do that another time. There we go. Bang on 20 minutes. Dave, we'll let you run off. Thanks again.
Very much.
There you go. Dave Thorpe, 3-time world champ. We're done again. Thanks to Holeshot Motorhomes and Crossbox, and we'll see you for another Man in the Van soon. Thanks a lot.